290. Hello. Welcome. Yiska. Me. There's Lifeweaver. We have a new hero. That's Pog. We're here. It's exciting. We have a lot of news to talk about. There's a lot of, Pro-Am results filtering in. I think by the time this hits your feeds, there will be Pro-Am probably later on today. A lot of things. The season's kicking up. Exciting times. Yiska, how are we feeling? How's Lifeweaver?
I think Eric is saying that it's like Pro-Am is only Saturday or Sunday, so it won't be.
Oh, is it? Presumably. Oh, never mind.
But yeah, like I had known about him for a bit, and yeah, I like seeing the description and seeing what it actually looks like is very different. I think, for instance, that Petal Platform is actually way more interesting than it sounds like from what the ability was.
Yeah.
And then arguably, yeah, like I'm not a big fan of the ultimate. That's a little lame. It's like a little boring.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Like I of course, like you gotta play him. But I'm more than anything else a little bit scared what he might do to pro play. But we'll see. We'll talk about it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Pro play concerns is not on the bingo card that I feel like the general public is fixated on. I feel like the big T word, the trolls are the big pain points. But I echo a lot of that same concern, or at least the feeling of concern, but in a different way as well. So we will be definitely diving into Lifeweaver. I promise you, it will not be focused on how people will throw your games. Spoiler: that will happen to you at least once. It will affect you. I'm sorry, but that's probably very short-sighted. Moving on. That won't be the entire Lifeweaver discussion. I promise you that. We do have the Pro-Am stuff coming on. I, for one, thought it was tomorrow, but it's just not, apparently. So stay tuned. So yeah, we will be diving into some results from the Pro-Am. We will be diving into Lifeweaver. However, before we do that, we need to thank our lovely patrons in our community. Shout out to the community. I thought we had a great discussion regarding Lifeweaver in our channel, aptly named Dumb Takes in Discord. It was full of certainly some takes, but I thought they were all pretty constructive, and it was definitely it was a fun time. So if that's something you're into, come on over. We chat about a bunch of stuff. So if you're AI pilled, if you're into anime and manga and anything nerd related, there's channels for that. Come on over. We don't bite. But episode 290 is brought to you by Battlecrab, Refund Bean, Bronzebot, Booyah, Picasso, Chris R34444, Kosh67, Lolshin, Porkchop, Sammy, Rexane, Volamel, and Sugar High. And our YouTube members, IMDRW, Brother Adam L, Sagifumi, Ice M Jello, Fire Element 6, AK, and Chris R. Lifeweaver. Weaver, as I'm aptly giving him as the shorthand.
Can I first off say it feels fucking wrong that they took LW from Lifeweaver. Okay, that's luxury watch. We all know. Okay, like that keeps confusing
that is wrong.
Me.
You did it wrong.
Like it keeps confusing me. I'll
really?
Yeah. I'm at that stage in my life where like certain knowledge just calcifies. It doesn't go away, or like there's no neuroplasticity. You know, like learn new abbreviation. No, everything new is bad now, Joe. Okay.
I mean, that I could pretty much safely assume. In your neck of the woods, I will say that that was definitely not of my ilk. Maybe this says more about me and what I've done for the past 20 years. When I type LW, I think of leatherworking. That's just me.
What are you doing in your free time, my friends? And who are you doing it for?
That's for the patrons to find out, I guess. No, it's mostly just like leatherworking. I was just like LW. My brain just like autocorrects that to like WoW terms, just because I've spent
right
my formative
that makes
adult
sense.
life
Okay.
On
of course, it's a nerd thing. How could I have thought it's some craftsmanship shit? Yeah.
No. God, no.
Yeah.
Me leatherworking with these hands? No. No. Lifeweaver is not teammate to Sabiolbi and Luna, Stan Luna. It is hero, I think 37, correct?
Correct.
We're on number 37.
Yep.
Lifeweaver has a grip. Quick rundown of abilities because again, everybody under the sun has a YouTube channel. Everybody under the sun, if you're remotely interested in Overwatch content creation, I'm sure you understand the abilities. But in the very Patrick Star case that you just don't happen to be, we will quickly run down the abilities. When he dies, he drops a health pack. Everybody can pick it up. It's probably not that useful. Has a life grip akin to like the World of Warcraft priest ability. You can grab your teammates. It does grant a shield and invulnerability frames as you're traveling through the life grip. Petal Platform, like Yiska mentioned. Lifeweaver drops a platform that once activated, once you step on it, it lifts you up into the air for 10 or so seconds. It can be shot and killed. Very cool.
Yeah, less than 10.
Yeah.
But also much higher than Maywall, which is pretty important.
True. Then there is the dash. He can dash. He heals himself a little bit. It's about the same length as like a Hanzo leap, just from a general eye test perspective. Is primary fire, or I guess technically it's not a primary fire, it's a separate weapon. Seems to be a low damage, high volume, can headshot, seems okay, seems pretty good. His healing numbers are pretty low across the board. I think that's pretty generally accepted that like for a healer or for a support, his healing isn't necessarily super high. And then his ult, he plants a tree a la Symmetra's old shield generator. It does 150 instantaneous healing to everybody in a May Blizzard sized area. And then over the course of, I think it was like 7 or 8 seconds, it'll pulse dealing, I think, was it 50 healing?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah.
Pulses. Yeah.
8 pulses, right. Over the course of, I think, 8 seconds. So like 1 pulse every second. I think at least from some people's perspectives in the community, a lot of ideas around like true supports that are more akin to adding utility to your team rather than just out like healing throughput, akin to like the difference between like Lucio and Moira, or like comparing Lifeweaver to Moira, right? Moira is very throughput focused, does a ton of HPS, has a lot of potential to just heal bot you. Whereas in comparison to Lifeweaver, has a lot of team utility. That's kind of cool. It is like a design shift from the past couple, right? I think the last one, obviously Kiriko, and prior to that probably would have been Baptiste. Significantly lower amount of healing when it comes to Lifeweaver. So to you, Yiska, you seem kind of interested in Petal Platform. So kind of walk me through some of your thought process there. Where do you see this being used the most?
So I think like they avoid it's an escape for him.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the probably most frequently used applications. That is just like personal use to get out of harm's way. Yep. In many ways, it works like a shield. So because it has 400 HP and it's actually like pretty big in the size of it, you can stand at an angle and block a ton of ultimates. I also thought it was quite interesting that you, for instance, can lift out of grab and all of that stuff, right? Yep. I think like it's deceptively strong. Like in my mind, when I first read it, I was like, "Oh, is this like an Octane thing? From Apex?"
Yeah, same.
It's
That's
like
exactly
a bouncy castle thing. No, but also a little bit yes, because of the momentum that you keep when you jump at the right time, right? Yep. What I am really concerned about, and I'm actually probably by the time this releases, you will probably have the article already. I don't know if you guys... Okay, this is my pony. I will never let it die. And in my... Let it be known, as they close the casket on my dead corpse, I will be saying, as a parting message, competitive integrity. Like, it's of course like a boost issue. It's a major boost hazard. right?
Yes.
And if we go by the spirit of the rule, it's a big question. Like, is it the spirit of the rule? Can I put a Maywall and a teleporter on this? Because like the prior definition was you cannot use a Maywall on an otherwise inaccessible surface in order to boost the teleporter up, right?
Yep.
All Petal Platforms are not like, or presumably, if you place them just on the ground, are not, inaccessible surfaces.
Correct.
Maywall can therefore, by the old rules, be placed onto the Petal Platform, and then you can use the Simter TP to teleport into every nook and cranny of the skybox. Okay, you're at this point, like you're definitely hitting your head on the skybox, probably. So I'm looking forward to the shenanigans there. I think this needs to be clearly defined. I can tell you, I got a quote from the Overwatch League. It will be part of the article. I can also tell you, there's no clarity in there. Okay,
Of course not.
so, and I understand to a large degree why, because like as you define rules, people develop a litigious spirit and then want to drive a whole like carriage of horses through like the hole of a needle, right? Like they will try to maximally abuse your rules as you define
As they
them,
should.
right? But the problem is then it gets into like a weird arms race of. Now here's my quibble with this, right?
Okay.
You know how we don't have referees in esports? You know why? Because we don't fucking need them.
Don't need them.
The fucking game should tell you what is possible, and unless you're using third-party software, everything else like should be allowed. There's no cheating. There's no. You can't like. It's fine if like competitive communities can come down to.
If you want a gentleman's agreement that we don't stall with Winston, that's fine.
Super based.
That's great.
Yep.
We don't need hard and fast rules. We don't need purposefully glib and obscured and vague rule sets to try to soft police and maybe even hard police what the game actually is allowed to be done.
If anything, I feel like we're not doing this enough in Overwatch. Okay, one thing that we learned through the last couple of years, and I don't want to define what it is, but politically, I would say, not the last couple of years, let's say the last decade, that it's not that we are being, that the fabric of societies around the world aren't being held together by laws. It's largely by convention. Okay? Like the shit, it's perfectly possible for... fuck it, I'm just going there. It's perfectly possible that Donald Trump has done nothing else illegal other than like whatever he's recently been found guilty for, right?
Okay, sure.
I don't believe that's true, but if that is true, then the legal system is not the thing that holds the societal fabric of the United States together, right? It's all convention. All of the civility that, like, everything that you valued about political discourse and, like, stability of your country is not law. It's all convention, right? So, in the same notion, I feel like yes, there's a problem because inherently competitive environments are meant to limit test rules consistently and push it to the max. But I also think we could be doing more on the conventional side of things if we realize, and maybe that should have already started, like, let's say during GOATs or whatever, right? Where, like, maybe if we agree that there is a problem with Brig, then you just tell everyone to not play it, right? Like I just find it like very interesting that GA's gentlemen's agreements so reliably work in other esports. Well, we never really had one, right? And I struggle to say that this boost is a gentleman's agreement because very clearly, no, it's not. But there's also no clearly delineated rule, and it's all about interpretation and like some weird edge cases of like, oh well, it's public knowledge. It's actually like, did you not see that like, it written into the ether like that everyone knows it? Yes, okay. That once again, it felt like the way in which this was brought to the attention of the admins was convention. I don't think like they actually stop the map unless some other Overwatch League players make it raise the issue, and therefore like we were map late, right? Yeah. Bottom line, back to Lifeweaver, the boost issue is through the fucking roof, dude. Like this is completely open to interpretation, like from roof surfing positions and what is feasible and where can you stand and what kind of positions are permissible, and like all of that is now open. And I tell you what, like you're not going to find it out in the 2 weeks he's available without even having ranked, right? Nope. What and the article I will write tomorrow will probably also mention this. I think we're at a point where if you have a boost, you should run that by the league and then hope for no leaks.
Yeah, that's the immediate rebuttal there, right? Is like, okay, I bring this up to the league. Do I trust league officials enough that they won't either talk about this to anybody, leak it to anywhere? Because apparently that is a concern that teams have for whether or not you believe that or not. Enough teams believe this to be the case that they don't run this by the officials, and they'll just ask what's the common saying, like it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. Yep. Right. It's just a little bit easier that way. It seems to be the case. If I'm reading what you're saying on face value. And yeah, no, I would wholeheartedly agree. Once I saw this kit, I was immediately like, okay, we're off to the races once again. We're here to set up rollouts. I'm going to be badgering every team on social media if you're not actively attempting some kind of rollout with like a Widowmaker or a Symmetra TP, like Yiska's saying, to get over a bunch of high ground, to reposition, any kind of all kinds of stuff. Because it is going to break the game. Now, what is interesting is, and you kind of alluded to it in the way that you set up the combo, is that you can't Petal Platform on a Mei wall. You have to platform first, activate it, place the wall, get on top of it, like boost yourself with the wall, right? Because Petal Platform technically, when it leaves Lifeweaver's hands, it is a projectile and it will bounce off of the wall before it deploys initially. So it seems like they are at least sort of aware of it being a potential problem, but then also allow you to build on top of it.
You also don't necessarily need the Mei wall anyway. Like that just
no, you don't,
right? Like you just you need either the Mei wall or the Symmetra turret, and you already can do a bunch of shenanigans. Honestly, I'm not convinced that the Petal Platform itself is not a problem in terms of getting into unintended locations for some of these characters, right?
Yep. Because like you alluded to, when you jump, and I believe you can do this at any point, you just have to jump off of it.
Yep.
Your momentum will carry with you. So if you Petal Platform and you jump at the apex of it at a certain point, your jump gets kind of floaty. So you are already reaching destinations that maybe certain characters should not be allowed to get to. Again, I don't know if that's been tested, and if it has, and everything's deemed, ladder legal. I don't know that the Overwatch League needs to come in over the top and try to police situations that they have no business policing, because they've shown that they care. I'm gonna use some big boy words, kind of inept. I'm sorry, the way that you handled the Paris Eternal and Florida Mayhem situation was goofy. Just was. Everything about it was silly. It made no sense. There is no rule book. You made them switch sides.
It was the switching sides was jokes.
I'm sorry. You've proven to everybody in the community you can't handle this, so let them play the game.
That was jokes, and the fact that we were on the next map, like everyone had already set up, like they had switched players and everything, and then that it presumably other players had to tell you that this was a rule infliction. Yes. That's the problem, and I'd argue it actually also kills the excitement for the esport.
It was a sick moment. You shot yourself in the foot because you thought you needed to police something.
And then again, if we all know this convention is like, we shouldn't use this, then it's fair for the opponent to be pissed.
Yes,
because like otherwise, if you think this is permissible, then you theoretically could be prepared for it, right?
Yes. Right.
I tell you, like I reached out to a bunch of folks in the Overwatch League. They don't know by this point what's happening. To be fair, very, very, like I think like the hero was just announced. For them to know by now would be a little
of course, right? Yes, of course. I don't blame anybody in the league ops or the front office of the Overwatch League that like they didn't know or couldn't foresee like potential future heroes being a problem. My complaint is that if you want to police and create hard and fast rules, you need to do so and make that very clear to the teams. If you don't want to do that, then don't sit in some sort of weird gray area middle ground where some things are permissible and some things aren't. At this point, you've made it abundantly clear that something about this is not permissible and you will be penalized for it. The issue is that I don't even believe, if I'm reading in between what Yiska's saying here, that teams are still clear on what is and is not.
No, they never were.
Like
they never were.
They never were, right?
They weren't with the striker boost. They weren't with the Florida Mayhem situation, even though there was more consensus about that particular bug. But then I went back and looked at all other instances where
Mayhem or the Houston stuff,
where Houston used it on like I'm not sure if it's like a post box on on first King's Row. You can't stand on that, but they boosted up. Like also, if you look at how Symmetra teleports in getting up that ramp, you very clearly know this is a bug. And then use the teleporter over, right? Like, come on. Like, that was already also a rule infliction. So, like, I think I actually want to push a little bit back to like to the idea that they can't be trusted to handle this. I think they can. You just got to be prepared. This is like you're now on notice. Like you gotta have a contingency plan of like this occurring in place because there's no obligation for teams to tell you. I think they should.
Oh,
in for the sense of like making. And by the way, like I don't know who's directly responsible, but if it's Packing, then I trust Packing's definitely capable of keeping a secret. So there shouldn't be any issues there. And also he's pretty involved in or has the background to understand what the functionalities are and what the strengths are and whatnot. So I think he would be probably the best person to talk to if that indeed is his job to decide on that, which I don't know. But yeah, I think there needs to be like some way to resolve this. Otherwise, we're just like in for a world of hurt theoretically. Like, I don't think it will be like a super huge issue, but like if my read is right, and I've talked to a couple of people that also think it's possible that this will be forcing a dive meta. If that take is right, there will be a lot of like over like obstacle engagements. That are theoretically now possible that previously weren't, right? Specifically for dive comps. And we gotta have you don't have to spell out, but you internally have to have a working definition as to what like is permissible and what not. And you need to communicate an approximation of that rule. Once again, I understand it's probably almost internal policy in these matters of like, where the game actually should fix the issue, but because there's always delay, right? And let's be honest, I don't love the fact that we are only going to have like 2 days of ranked practice on Lifeweaver when the season starts. You're not going to have good data. I'm sorry. Like, they're going to be able to scrim on presumably same time, hopefully. So right after Pro AM finals, I would think. Like, the Monday probably is when... I don't have info on this, but I would assume that's when he goes live for the Overwatch League players. Then they can mess about a little bit. They will probably find a couple of things. Hopefully they can forward that feedback to the appropriate channels, and they can be heard on that feedback, because I can tell you they certainly have things to say, and the opinions are pretty divided. It's interesting. From like this is a pretty polarizing hero. From like this will hard force XYZ comp to this will be viable to this won't be viable to this will be viable because XYZ. This will force dive, poke, rush. Like, there's a pretty wide divide in opinions being shared, and like I think also one thing that like elusively the strength of this character is actually the damage. I think you are entirely capable of dueling traces, for instance, in the back.
Oh yeah. Yep. Like, if you put this in the hands of like a extremely world class, Violet Shu, you throw them out, they could probably feel very confident. And we kind of talked about this in the community Discord a little bit, but like I foresee Lifeweaver playing on it, like not a flank, but like almost marking a tracer on his own. Right? Like you are more than capable. You have tons of tools at your disposal, not only a movement ability, but like we're talking about Petal Platform can be used kind of to create sight lines that weren't there, or to block sight lines that normally shouldn't be blocked and create cover. And he's very self-sufficient in a way.
Yes. Yeah. And also, like, and this is fun about this hero, but it's also a little scary, because like Kiriko sort of like broke the rule in how a hero can move by going through walls, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I feel like, I don't want to say break, because that's not necessarily the right, but broke open several assumptions about Overwatch and how you play, that he's just like, in Germany we had this this word for like a German player that became like a World Cup Golden Boot, so scored the most goals, Thomas Müller, and he was called the Raumdeuter, which was like the room interpreter. And I feel like that's Lifeweaver with a lot of the abilities. High ground, inaccessible from this location. Okay, now it is for everyone, theoretically, if coordinated well, right? Oh, you didn't make it up there? Let me help you. Oh, you used all your cooldowns to go hard in, and now usually like the rotation of the opponent is, oh yeah, they wasted everything, now I can like go in or whatever.
I can punish you. Yeah.
Nope. Life grip, right?
Yep.
And then also like, oh, here, look at this sideline, this can work. Tree of Life, right? Like as a sideline breaker, and even though, granted, 1000 HP is pretty easy to burst down depending on your composition. I'm not sure. I assume it would be similar to Bob, and you can probably apply like orb to it and whatnot.
You cannot, if I'm understanding the logic correctly. Emong had a great video. Shout outs to Emong. I think if I remember to, I'll leave it in our Discord so we can put it in the video description. He kind of does like a Mythbuster style video where he goes down certain interactions. You cannot Discord orbit. I know that for sure. I've heard from Stylosa in his video breakdown of Lifeweaver that EMP apparently either heavily damages the tree or outright removes it. I have not seen visual confirmation of that, but I do know for a fact you cannot Discord orb the tree of life.
Okay, yeah, it has 1000 HP, which is like, sometimes if you're Ryan, you know how little 1000 HP on a big target can be.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And like one thing that I also thought interesting, but didn't turn out to be the case, is it doesn't contest point, right? That would have been interesting if it did that, right? Other than that, again, I find the ultimate pretty lame, but like you'll have to see it in effect. It could probably like help stalling ridiculously. Like, this would be a nightmare on assault if we still had that map set.
2CP would be but like, it's underwhelming. As an ultimate, right?
Right.
I would definitely like to see how it feels. Once you're in a game, because numbers wise, it does kind of, when we look at like the raw numbers, it does kind of like strip away like any and all. That's just one hero's ultimate in conjunction with 4 other people's, abilities and what they're doing and how much damage they're taking. And I will strictly talk about pro play before I talk about like the general consensus, because I think like that's its own topic. So in the pro sphere, or at least the coordinated sphere, it's hard to say. It does feel underwhelming as an ability, or as at least an ultimate. Kind of jury's out on how good it feels. Maybe it feels better to use, maybe it doesn't. Hard to say. I do agree that the damage is probably where I see the most. The damage in correspondence to like the massive amount of utility is probably where I see a lot of the value. I still want probably an Ana. I still probably want like a Baptiste. This is something else that we kind of talked about the other day in the Discord, is like it's going to be difficult to kind of postulate on what he pairs well with, because we don't know what the rest of the patch looks like, other than apparently McCree having 200 HP or Cassidy having 200 HP. So like maybe that's a thing. Hard to say. Saw it in a couple gameplay leaks that Cassidy has 200 HP, so we can kind of guess as much. But when it comes to like actual healing throughput, or like who's getting what buffs or nerfs, it's difficult to say. But if we launched with Lifeweaver on this patch today, I think Ana and Kiriko probably are like the go-to, examples, because I agree, it probably does facilitate a little bit more dive than it does anything else. I was trying to think through what a poke comp looks like with this. I think there are some examples where you can have like a Widow or a Sojourn, maybe even a Cassidy, take really aggressive angles with like a Sigma barrier, or like a Ramatra kind of pocketing him in some way. He kind of catches the dive. You have your Lifeweaver pull out your flick scan DPS, your high, your Bastion, whatever. Hanzo probably is a better example. And you don't have to burn any kind of like meaningful cooldown on the hero to kind of reposition them, keep them in the fight, and continue to poke. Just kind of leaving your tank out there on an island a little bit, then your support helps them, or the other support. It does feel a little bit more conducive to dive. Having Tracer, having the ability to either like follow around a Tracer so that they don't have to burn recall immediately when pressured or marked. Having the ability, like you said, to throw everything into a Winston and have them play hyper aggressive, or maybe even Wrecking Ball, maybe even a Doomfist, right? Letting them just kind of play like with this crazy aggression, and then having that get out of jail free card. It almost feels, the more that we kind of think through this, almost res-like, where we are now not only playing for cooldowns of the target that we're aiming to punish, but we're aiming to punish, or we have to also heavily consider Lifeweaver's 20-second life grip timing. And it is punishable, right? That is a very clear and open window where it's like, okay, we've gotten out the life grip. Now we can really, capitalize. It is going to be a incredibly powerful ability in the coordinated sphere. I think that's going to be like the key, is how do teams use this? How can we abuse it? What does a bad life grip look like in coordinated play, right? Like we're still seeing people jump backwards and get nano boost because of like HP tempo, right?
Right.
We saw it in the Pro-Am, Glads versus Justice. Ben Best is jumping out at like 20% HP, and Teru nanos him as he's jumping out of the fight. Not something you still want to do. So like, again, still some pain points when it comes to even the coordinated play, and where we're using our abilities. So I do expect there to be some pretty sloppily used life grips, but I think there are going to be some teams that abuse the ever-loving shit out of this ability and make it look obscene. Whether that's a Doomfist or a Wrecking Ball, what have you, there are going to be teams that get out in front with this and really make it look disgusting. It feels almost res-like, where this is the name of the game. We are looking at effective use of life grip, and the better life gripping team tends to be winning more and more fights. That's at least where I see with it. I will toot my own hill that I will die on regarding abusing the fact that you can now triple. You can get to some pretty, I would assume, you can get to some pretty obscene areas with May, Sim, and Lifeweaver. And attacking teams on Hybrid and Escort do have the ability to swap heroes off of spawn. If I see, I'll say this. I will forever be a fan of a team that abuses that to the nth degree on opening fights. You have a 15-second window, let's say, that you can abuse the fact that you have ridiculous facilitation of widows like heroes like Widowmaker, maybe even Hanzo, maybe even Bastion, maybe even Junkrat, for example. And that's really reaching. That you can put them in positions that ignores maybe 70% of the opening map terrain, pushing people out of sight lines, maybe even killing them, and immediately being able to swap your hero and not feel punished for that. The only thing you're trading off is marginal seconds off the clock. If you do not do this, I'm sorry, you're not trying.
Yeah, and it depends on the efficacy of that. You're still sort of like locked in.
You need like a positive use case. Like there does need to be situations met, but that is like, this is how you progress the game. Like we were talking about, where it's like, okay, we have the game. The game sets up the needle, right? That we were talking about. It is the team's jobs to be the horses to force through the eye of the needle. I have yet to see consistent. You know what I'm saying? I'll say this, and you'll probably roll your eyes a little bit. Like, watch Point Gibraltar, Point A, right? The big meme, at least to me, is that nobody abused the fact that you could Orisa and Roadhog hook in Overwatch 1 to abuse that like close hold, right? On defense and watch Point Gibraltar, people would hold in like the little room on the high ground. You can halt, you can hook. The success rate is very marginal. However, why wouldn't you? I'll trade a 5% success rate for 5 seconds of my time. Not a big deal. The fact that I could win the fight, to me, benefits me more than just like not trying it at all. I'm sorry, that's kind of lazy. I expect the future of this season, if Lifeweaver exists in a usable or viable state, to be very opening favored. I want to see some creative openings. I want to see some people do some goofy stuff. That just, there's a lot of creative opportunities, and I think that's the name of the game when it comes to Lifeweaver. Incredibly creative endeavor. Super cool hero. I'm very excited to see what coordinated play looks like with Lifeweaver. I think it's going to be super sick. Anything else regarding Mr. Weaver?
I mean, no. Like, yes, I know you didn't want to like talk too much about the trolling aspect, and I agree. Like, I don't know if you saw my tweets to
I don't think I did. No.
Your Overwatch, basically, like the argument SVB in your Overwatch were like making it, or Frito, I guess, was that it's weird to see so many people talk about the trolling aspect, because you're technically already getting trolled by not getting the heal, you know, by not getting that ability used on you. And to a degree, that's true, right? Like, someone could just throw their ultimate at you without, like, you know, there's a bug on you type shit.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
So that's trolling. My argument is there's something transformationally different about having agency taken away from you, because even in the worst game, you still can have your little victories that give you, like, and snipe some dopamine from the opponent, right? Like, that is possible to do, and I think, like, the fact that you can grieve in that way is a different level of intentionality that will impact the social situation of that a little differently. I will say yes, the May boost or the May wall off in spawn already doesn't happen that often. I don't think it will be a major issue. I almost feel a little bad for contributing towards that narrative a little bit, even though I asked if, or during the Q&A, if it was really just a conscious decision to not concede ground to those who will misuse it, right? And just let your creativity fly, and then you just solve it through bans. You know, like, that's a possibility. Why do you always need to design your game around the worst asshole user? You know?
Yeah, you don't balance your game for League of Legends terrorists. You balance the game with ideally the most, charitable intentions for the most part. I'm not speaking ideologically. I'm just speaking like, we expect the vast majority of players to not actively troll with this. If it becomes a problem, there are obvious things that you can do to remedy this, whether that be allowing options for accept and auto accept life grip features, right? I think that's something that is very feasible that Team 4 can add. I think it's also, like you're saying, you could just ban people.
I hate that option, actually.
I don't like it either, but if it becomes like that big of a problem, then okay, we have to address it. Unless there's maybe a more creative
because
way.
That shit would tilt me more. I have played Thresh, my guy.
I know. Now
motherfuckers not pressing the fucking lantern is just like some of the worst gaming experiences, bro. That shit sucks.
Again, this is a brief explanation of what I mean by like accepting and auto accepting, right? For the vast majority of players, this shouldn't be a problem, but in the use case that it is a problem. People are actively griefing, and like the devs can see this from it reflected in the numbers. Would you hate it if by default everybody's like in the character options menu, there is a specific subtext that said auto accept Lifeweaver's life grip ability on off, and you had to go into the menu to turn it on, and if you didn't, then you actively have to accept it. You hate that more or less?
I just think that's just like a shit solution. I don't know. It feels so yank. Does the person still get the shield?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know.
That maybe is. I don't know. That would probably create a very odd, unintended gameplay.
That once again like creates a social tension. It's like, motherfucker, do you really like not trust me to have this shit up? Like, I'm trying to help you here, and now I wasted my cooldown on you.
Yes,
and you're auto declining it. I am that's dude. Like, this is lantern shit. Like,
it is, and I don't expect this to be the case. And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. But again, that would be like the easiest, in my opinion, way to kind of solve the problem, because then even banning people, even being a little bit more heavy-handed with bans, comes with like, what do you mean by trolling? Like, is the Mercy in bronze that reses you 4 down or 3 down technically? Are they trolling, or are they just dumb? Is the May trolling you when they're walling you, or are they just dumb and they think that they're helping and they're just not, right? I don't know that people are going to be able to differentiate the case, so you're probably going to get a ton of false positive reporting, and it's probably going to have to coincide with like a bunch of like chat and like voice comm stuff that like you have to probably have some bigger evidence other than I think they were trolling, right? And that's where I'm like, okay, if I can go into my options, I'm like, okay, I think this guy's either dumb or trolling, then I can just turn off auto accept and I don't have to like get grabbed by this idiot. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. If
there is somebody griefing me, I can stop them immediately and continue having my fun. Or if I think you're just bad at the game to a obscene level, I can just choose now to interact with you instead of having it being forced on me. I think that's probably the easiest foot forward with that. I don't think it's going to be a huge deal in the long run. I think it will impact people. I think it is going to affect some people. It will, it will be polarizing. I don't think it's going to be like the end of the world. However, what I do think is that this is going to be the most boring hero for the average player, period, the end.
Maybe.
Thoughts? I think people are going to think that this is again, right now, snapshot right now. Everybody's like, oh my God, hot boy, so cool, so creative, so much fun. I'm going to have so much fun with this guy. The second you get a hold of him in a solo queue game or a quick play game, and you don't have any teammates that don't want to cooperate, you are going to immediately swap off of him. He does not heal all that much. His damage is pretty good, but I don't think that's enough of a use case in like below GM play. I think you're looking for like raw numbers. And either you are going to go on some crazy flanks, which could be fun. Maybe that's like the fun of it, is that you kind of DPS Moira, but with Hot Boy. And you TP around and you get up in places you shouldn't, and you dash around and maybe you heal your team a little bit, but you're shooting your little Halo needler gun into people, and throwing up life trees and the back line, and maybe that's fun for you. But for the vast majority of people who I think are a little bit more support focused, I think it's going to be very, very clunky. It's going to feel incredibly underwhelming, and the feeling of, okay, when's the next hero coming out, happens really fast. And I think Overwatch already has that problem, and I think this season is going to like have that problem expedited very quickly, because I don't think people, after a week of like the novelty factor of Lifeweaver, will wear off for the average player very quickly.
I think I agree.
That's my worry.
I think I agree. Yeah. I feel like there's like the most of the fun down the line from this kit for the average player will actually come from like being able to be pretty self-sufficient, like getting Petal Platform will only be used as an escape. Let's be honest. Like,
yes.
Oh my God, Junkrat's are coming, or like any old get jail out of jail free card.
Mm-hmm.
Life grip will be usually misused or like not used that well.
Yep.
And then yeah, it's kind of okay that there's like that the healing blossom auto aims, right? Yeah,
of course. I think that would be like the easiest way to like, well, maybe not the easiest way, but like the quickest way to get people back to playing Lifeweaver is you just give them more healing. But there again, like now you're playing with fire. Like you got to take something away from him. Because not only is it basically auto aim, but there is like a weirdly high skill gap with a lot of the tech that we're already starting to see. Some of the content creators, Emong, I referenced earlier. I think Aspen, you linked in the Discord, that had like some interesting interactions. Shout outs to her. There is a weirdly high skill gap, because even just with like the healing blossom, and I think a lot of people have showcased this already, but obviously you can like arc it over shields. That's super important. How that works with like certain line of sight, I think that could be kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. If you can maybe arc it over like the wall on King's Row, I don't know. That's stuff we're gonna have to play test and figure out. The Petal Platform, again, if you don't know, you can actually put it in certain doorways and have it only levitate halfway, because it hits the hitbox basically hits the door frame, and it just kind of creates the pseudo wall that, like, again,
that's kind of cool. Yeah.
That's going to be stuff that people kind of have to play with. And the only way that the enemy team can traverse it is if you crouch under it or destroy it. And like, that's interesting tech that Lifeweaver is going to, like, Lifeweaver players are going to have to learn. I just don't know if like the vast majority of players are going to be interested in learning that. If this is just like a hyper tech heavy hero, I think that's super cool, but I certainly hope Blizzard doesn't get in the way of that like they have in the past, right? Hopefully they just allow whatever bugs or tech to be found with Lifeweaver to just be implemented into the game or just left alone, a la like the super boost with like the super jump with Mercy. And there's obviously a couple bugs in the past that were, whether or not you agree or disagree, kind of cool. And Blizzard obviously has patched that out. If Lifeweaver is going to be that tech hero, let him be that. Let him be the one trick pony dream. And I think that's probably the best foot forward because again, the true support archetype is effectively Lifeweaver, but he is like the crazy exception that we didn't expect anybody, any developer ever to try to implement, right? Like Thresh is already like, dang, crazy. So you're telling me that part of my kit, and again, Thresh from League of Legends, if you're not familiar, he throws a lantern. The team has to interact with the lantern, and you get like yoinked back, right? It you can do some pretty weird stuff with it, but it is a very, very interesting and very creative tool, very strong in the hands of coordinated and world-class players. So this is one of those like high skill cap. Don't bother playing him if you haven't spent and read the textbook on how to play him yet. If you're not, you got to read the manual to get into Lifeweaver. So my concern to kind of exit this point, my concern is the novelty factor. I think people are going to get tired of him very quickly. I don't really think that trolling is going to be an issue for too terribly long. There are solutions for that. My big solution or my big worry is people won't like playing him all that much.
I think what could be interesting to explore, just because he also feels like he has no real ability outside the ult to group heal, is to think about have rejuvenation dash heal everyone for a certain amount that Lifeweaver dashes through. So now you have to make a decision, right? Like, do you want to use it offensively, defensively? At what point? Do you keep the cooldown, or is it needed right now? It doesn't have to be terribly high, right? Like 50 or some, so 75. Yeah. And that could be interesting to toy around with and play a little bit with the numbers. Because I think like Healing Blossom can very quickly get into a position where it is actually pretty busted. Just because of the ultimate aim situation, and if you buff the numbers too heavily, right? Like for instance,
yeah, you definitely don't want to, but that would be like the immediate like public feedback is just like he needs to do more healing. It's like, well, no, because then he becomes, absurd.
But then again, like it's so hard sometimes to foretell. Like in the end, like maybe Thorn Volley is way too busted, and like it kills flankers. Like he duels flankers all day, and like he busts like harder than the Zen or whatever. It's really hard to foresee. One thing I will say is I was pretty surprised how good it still is at medium range, right? Like it feels like more like a SMG type thing, like close range. Yeah. Well, it kind of packs a punch, especially in the hands of the right player.
Yep. And that's where it's like, and this has been a topic thrown around quite a bit in our Discord and already in kind of our chat with our producer Eric. Is this a main support or a flex support, or who do we want playing this to save Kenobi's eardrums when using the archaic main support and flex support denotation? Do you want who's the best main support you can think of off the top of your head? Astro,
yeah, or Lee Jae-gon.
Yeah, Sure, Astro, Lee Jae-gon. Do we want one of those players, or do we want Violet, or do we want Shu to play Lifeweaver?
Yeah,
I know my answer.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I think like for the best main supports, they also have pretty good
they're
mechanics,
solid aim.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, but generally speaking, I would expect the flex support players to be much more capable. Then again, maybe this is the first hero once again where it's sort of maybe it's a Brig situation. I think like Brig never really found its place, and it's okay, right? Like it can be played by the main support, the flex support, the DPS. Like it's just like a bit of a weird one that just works out in the way it does. I would think, like, for instance, I could also see that Skewed is pretty good at Lifeweaver, right? So yeah, like, again, it will really depend on, like, by what metrics Lifeweaver will be lifted into relevance in Pro play. And my hunch is it ain't going to be Petal Platform. Like, this could be more interesting if we had more like a heavily ult relying meta. I think, like, he's pretty good at avoiding those. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's theoretically possible to just, like, have hard dive, but then you probably also want Lucio. Is that enough healing? And, like,
I'm having a brain blast.
Okay.
The universe is speaking to me. Okay.
Let's go.
It's singing to me, maybe. Ready? This is the incoming. This is what I'm going to assume the incoming meta for the spring stage of the 2023 Overwatch League will be. Okay. The tank is difficult to call. I'm going to say that anything between Winston, Wrecking Ball, and Doomfist are viable. Sure. I'm going to assume that Winston and Wrecking Ball take up the lion's share of the playtime. Depending on the map and the team, Doomfist can be played, whatever.
Sure.
DPS wise, I think Cassidy is a lock. 200 HP. He's a thick boy. He's already seeing playtime. I don't see that to change. Secondary DPS, not secondary, but like the second DPS. Depending on the map, big flat maps, Tracer seems like a given. However, if there is any kind of verticality, depending on what this patch looks like, I think Genji over Echo seems to be what I feel like is the best foot forward. And I think Lifeweaver probably facilitates those people coming back into the meta if they don't see many kind of changes. The fact that you now can use dash way more aggressively on Genji, and maybe even use your dash on Echo even more aggressively, I think reinvents those heroes quite a bit. Not only that, but they're great nano targets. I expect Ana to continue to see playtime. She is just kind of busted. So I think this is probably a 1 of 3 dive tanks. Cassidy, Genji, Tracer, Echo maybe. Then you have Lifeweaver, Ana, maybe a Kiriko, maybe. I think it's probably predominantly Ana, but it's very dive heavy. You're playing split supports. Lifeweaver's kind of off on an island, kind of laterally away from your Ana. He is shoving his beautiful manicured fingers in the face of Tracer, just stiff arming her like a little brother. And it's very skirmishy, right? And then you're playing for nano blades. You're playing for maybe nano monkeys. Again, facilitating very aggressive play, which I think is probably something great for the audience. That would be my best guess. That's what I think. Like, that's the initial thought, at least for me.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think that, once again, I'll have the article up. This someone said something iconic. Should I dig up the quote?
That's up if you want to.
Let me find it real quick, because that's a great quote. It definitely will make it in there. So the quote by that person is, my instincts say the hero won't be good until damage and healing numbers are very strong. The utility doesn't seem enough if he's got a big hitbox and low numbers. But I've also learned my lesson that every new hero is broken, so it will probably have 100% pick rates. Which I found to be super based take.
Yeah, they're not wrong. It's difficult. Okay, now I'm not gonna toot my own horn, but I think I have a fairly solid ground when it comes to, like, yes, I agree. This one feels like it could go either way. Kiriko, I saw that shit. Yeah, no, this character is nuts. The ult's nuts. The movement's nuts. Cleansing is nuts. Triple headshots nuts. It's going to take some time to get used to, like we've seen. I think we've seen Kiriko play evolve quite a bit. I think people have gotten way better at it than we saw in the playoffs. I think that Lifeweaver is probably going to take way more time to get like the potential out of, but on its face as it stands now, yeah, bigger hitbox is definitely something that you do have to account for. That's going to take some play testing. That's going to take some like feeling out of like, okay, is he actually just taking a ton of damage? The healing doesn't seem fantastic, but maybe you don't need a ton of healing if Thorn Volley and his utility to self-sustain is just, you know, reducing the amount of damage that flankers can do. It's hard to say. That's where I think Lifeweaver stands for me. Any last thoughts there?
No, that checks out for me.
All right, moving on. In a weird, serendipitous way, we kind of agree, which is kind of, I think, kind of rare, but also not so much. But we do have Pro-Am results. Some surprising results. I will eat my crow now. I was wrong about the Gladiators. They did make it out. I doubted. I was proven wrong. Maybe by means outside of my control.
Come again.
Okay, look, bro, if Mirror's coming in last map, I'm calling shenanigans. I'm hitting the buzzer. I want a mulligan. I want that to go 99 out of 100 games, or, you know, out of 100 games, let's say. Do the justice, consistently lose against the Gladiators. I don't know. I think my point is validated to some degree that the Gladiators are not what we expected. The expectations put on them from last season are not warranted. At least not as it stands now. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but like, would you say that about Shock?
No, because I think their circumstances a little bit different, no?
A little bit different, but like, they also just came together recently. Yes, they're all playing off ping or like, that's pretty big. But yeah, I think like especially because Lifeweaver will also be coming in, and that would change the meta and everything.
Sure.
My takeaway from Pro AM into my like preseason power rankings or end of season rankings will be fairly limited.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I don't. This has not done anything to shift my priors. This has only like emboldened them in my personal opinion.
Sure. Yeah.
I think Glads is right where I expected them to be. Like, they're a little bit worse than I think most of the public thinks. You know, again, oh my God, it's Dante, it's Yaki, it's Kai, it's Kevster. They're nuts. Sorry, guys. It just ain't coming together just yet.
Yeah.
Maybe it comes together later in the season. We'll have to see. Again, my points are known regarding Yaki, regarding Dante. A lot of question marks there. Seems like a good mid-pack team. That's as high as they go. Especially when you have Titans like, no pun intended. When you have like these crazy like championship chasing teams like Houston, like Shock, like Atlanta. Glads ain't built like that, guys. Glads is not of that creed.
We'll see.
We will see. We will see.
I mean,
again, I will happily be wrong.
I agree. I think they're a good A team. They're not an S team. Yeah,
100%. Maybe even like a low A team for me.
Yeah,
like an A-, maybe B+. Like that's the kind of feeling I get. And again, that could remedy itself. I think it would it would do Gladiators a whole lot of it would support Gladiators quite a lot if the format suddenly changed and we had 16 games to split, but eight officials to figure out whether or not we're a good team. Seems a little high variance for me for a high variance team. That's where I kind of sit with them. But I was wrong. They did make it out, and we will see more of the Gladiators. I was pleasantly and positively frustrated with the Washington Justice. Flora, I thought, had a surprising result. I thought he was a significant boon when it came to their game against the Gladiators. Was him. He was in there. He was doing some things. Obviously, my stance is known regarding Alpha Yi. Shout outs to the real ones if you want to pipe up. hit me, you know, let's throw down creator clash style on the timeline. Maybe we go back and forth, but he's Himothy. Guy's cracked. I think people are hopefully starting to come around to that. But yeah, other than that, Ben Best, brother Best. Oh boy, shit's gonna need to tighten up a little bit. I like the feeling. Justice, very proactive, not the Justice of old. That's a thumbs up. We're a little bit too proactive. We're a little bit feeding. Not a lot of communication going on. Teru, he's trying him best. Okay, he's out there. He's trying to follow you, Ben, but you gotta reel it in a little bit. There was a point on King's Row where like Teru on attack is like looking through the grates on point A, like the little like fence post to try to like snipe into Ben Best, who's like diving into the hotel. And it's just like, I can't chase you, guy. Like, you gotta help me help you. Like, please. You can't just be screaming in French and shut the door behind you. You know what I mean? Like, let's work together a little bit. It's got some solid legs. I think this is a solid team. It just needs some time to marinate. And I do think that if that head-to-head happens in the regular season, I don't know which way it goes depending on the meta. Right. That's the big asterisk. But as it stands now, it's a competitive matchup. And I think that's like says a lot to the Justice.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. It's already like pretty amazing how much they were or like how good they look in comparison to what they, have available to them. So it'll be an exciting team that probably always will have like some outside chance, right?
Yep.
And that's basically like the hopium for Justice fans, I feel like, this season.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Exciting, like up punch ups. Oh, Joe.
Yes. Hello.
Will Justice finish below Titans?
I am working on my power rankings. I think I have them scheduled for the end of the week.
Does it suck for you to just start with Titans? Like
Titans at 7th? No, it really doesn't. That's the crazy part. Where do I have Justice? Oh, actually, okay, they should probably be up a little bit. I hadn't gone through the below 7 too tightly. But I do have Titans at 7th. That's as far as I can feasibly put them. And then as it stands now, I have London under them and then Justice at 9th. So like they are like the bridge, they are the floor of like the feasibly competitive teams. Right. That's kind of where I feel like, again, Pro-Am's only emboldened that. If anything, yeah, no, I would probably put Justice where they are now, like prior to Pro-Am, at least in my mind. I think like them and New York are like neighbors. I don't particularly care for New York. I hate to say that, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't think Fitz is like particularly fantastic. I think they are one of those teams that like kind of needs like a tracer specialist right now, especially if we're going into dive. I don't think Shockwave or Psycho, they're okay, but they're not going to be competitive with, some of these like stacked NA teams, right?
It's going to be hard, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
When you have Yaki running around, as much as I don't really care for Yaki, Yaki is going to run you over if you do not have somebody in his face. So that's kind of the litmus test for me right now. And they ain't passing it. So maybe they get a hard hit scan meta and Fitz can kind of do some magic. But there again, if Brother Man Flora is coming out here looking like a rejuvenated player, then you're screwed two ways from Sunday, right? You lost your new captain and you lost somebody who actually is quite good, right? Yep. To kind of transition from that, somebody who still looks quite good after a year break, apparently Birdring is just Himothy. Guy looked like he hasn't missed a beat since Apex Season 2.
Yeah.
Like, wow. Absolutely a veteran, like a what word the fuck am I thinking of? Like a masterclass performance. Like looked like the Birdring of old, right? Like this is the superstar that we kind of always expected to be there. even during like their season 1 like championship run, it was a little spotty. Obviously, he didn't play all the time, but when he did, like it still wasn't always there. His time on the Glads, he had some great performances. Homie looks fantastic for Boston.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. It's really exciting. Looking forward to. Actually, like this is probably the first season where I will be an active member of the cult of Birdring.
Yeah.
I felt like in the past, especially like in season 1, he was a little overhyped and stole a lot of the spotlight that should have been on Prophet.
Mm.
Then later seasons, he definitely like performed great on the Gladiators. And yeah, it's great to have him back. It looks like he hasn't skipped a beat. But also like I talked to Pre, and like apparently like the guy is just like a consummate professional. Yeah, dude, what the fuck is up with like everyone just having ridiculous glow ups as well? Like in the Overwatch League right now. But yeah, he like people know of the the buff Birdring. And
I haven't seen buff Birdring.
Oh really?
Is Birdring just yoked now?
Wasn't there the thing already a couple of seasons ago where he was just like the strongest guy on Glads or whatever, and like did a bunch of workout and like was basically like already like out benching most folks.
I remember DePay mentioning that like Birdring was like weirdly strong.
Yeah.
I think maybe I don't know. I've never not that I need proof, but like not something that I like clocked. I thought this was more of like a Piggy shout out because Piggy looks fantastic. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen that on socials, but
Twilight
Piggy Twilight looks fantastic. Yeah, Overwatch has a ton of just people. Yeah, glow ups is a good word for it. I think people like really kind of coming into their own skin and looking good for it. So shout outs to them. Shout out to everybody doing a little self improvement. Shout outs to you guys.
I feel like the first guy that did this was Void.
Yes.
Right? Like if people remember Void from Apex and then Void from season 4, like pictures of Jesus Christ, dude. Like he just took like this body and put it through like a serious marbling chisel session, and like came out like definitely all glown up on the other side.
Very glown up. Yeah. I think Aim God did something very similar, right?
Yeah.
Just fucking went from just kind of scrawny nerd guy to like just yoked like Zen player. Like again, yeah.
Great to see. Yeah.
Very, very proud of the progress and happy to see it. Is there in a contenders team that you've had a glow up on, an opinion changed? Have you watched any of the contenders games?
Yeah, but other than Trick Room, who I already had an inkling based on talking to a couple of people, not really, man. Like,
no, I mean it's been a little sad. I think Redbirds was like very disappointing.
Mm-hmm. Even Saints.
Saints wasn't what I think a lot of people promised. I think my question was kind of it was answered, because I think that the loss of having your kind of starting flex support being poached to the Valiant is going to affect the team, right? Whether or not they're like absolutely nuts and their replacement is still still pretty good, like that's going to do something to a team.
Yeah.
But even then, it still feels like maybe even the skill level was maybe not met with the replacement. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I feel like the timing is like unfortunate, and I'm sure it's really hard to make work any other way with like the leeway that we had. But it's like, ideally you have Pro AM before the signing window opens even.
Correct. Yeah. We would want the Pro Am to be almost like in previous seasons where like Gauntlet was, to be a scouting tool.
There's so much, like, I say that, and then I like it for that one aspect, but then it also means, like, we delay when the players need to be signed, so we, like, bar them from getting the salary. during that. So you would need a compensation mechanism in that regard. Maybe a mandatory sign-on bonus or something, or like a bump to the min
or just like
salary.
An optionality clause, right? Like if you want to compete and your team's ready to compete, like we'll stipend you. Like we'll do something. We'll sweeten the deal a little bit so that like not all the teams are competing. It still gives contenders like a stage to kind of showcase some talent. Maybe it's not the best talent. Maybe contenders teams can perform a little bit better. Maybe they get a little bit extra cash. Maybe they last a little bit longer in the ecosystem, right? I don't know. Hard to say.
I just want like this. Ideally, how this works is Pro-Am happens. Some kids pop off. Their market value rises, and therefore people are excited because they saw that, which was sort of like the World Cup effect, right? But once again, as I talk myself through this, I also realize why it can't work. For like, when are you just going to have it really shortly after the grand finals? That feels weirdly badly paced, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
if you have it.
Yeah. Maybe that. Like okay, you could get highly technical. Like maybe you only can sign X amount of players to your roster by this time, and then you already secure your core, and then like the rest is opened up after or something like this, right?
Yeah.
That would like, I mean, at this point, like roster stability would be total ass, but like part of me would think like I actually hate it, but part of me thinks like it could be interesting to maximize like the amount of contracts, or only allow 3 contracts to be kept after every season, and then you have to let them go, you know? Like, I think that would pass, but like it would be interesting in some way.
Let me throw this at you, because I think the idea of the Pro-Am, as my niece is knocking at my door, I'm gonna throw this at you and let you kind of ramble on it. What do we hate regarding the return of the Gauntlet and limiting Overwatch World Cup to strictly non-league players? What do you think about that? Does that create enough of a showcase?
I thought about this before. I actually thought that was probably going to be the best case scenario, but once again, this is so hypothetical into an ongoing procedure of like vast amount of things to consider, that it is probably going to be very hard to actualize that much, also because people just wouldn't watch it wouldn't want to watch it as much, right? I think at this point, we probably just want to maximize viewership across the board, and that usually means like always having the best talent play with the best competitive output that is available. And that's actually one of the arguments as to why you keep the players on their contenders teams, so they, you know, like still have those squads that are competitive. And it would be fun to see, like, what if CJ is on that team? Right? Can they punch up? Can they get out and that type of stuff? But all of this, like, the problem is these systems are highly contextual to the actual gameplay and scene realities as they present themselves. And those presentations are highly volatile to all kinds of other factors, right? Sure. I think something like the Pro-Am, if you have still like not even just the academy system, but like teams like AT, teams like British Hurricane, teams like O2 Blast, if you have those guys around, then that's a very different...
Super exciting. It feels like every other season, and this is something that you've brought up on the show in the past, but like almost any other season, you could have put the Pro-Am in, and it's instantly a better product. This is probably one of the worst times to implement this.
It's the worst times to implement this, and it's also the one that's the hardest to make a compelling product, as we also unfortunately saw in the viewership. And now in the end, I mean, this is now an all Overwatch League only tournament in effect, right? Like we already filtered out all the teams, and we really did a lot in order to not make that happen by like making it best of 3. You know, best of 3, like making it more volatile in that case, right? We even had like the runner-ups like on ping and all of this stuff, and it still didn't happen. And my gut feeling is that it's not because contenders teams necessarily underperformed. So there's a systemic problem of facilitating, especially in the West, talent that can keep up with Overwatch League talent. And
that's kind of always at least been majority of the case, right? Like outside of like AT and like British Hurricane in some instances, and maybe some like top like North American contenders performers, like it's been slim pickings, right? Like Mayhem Academy sometimes, Fusion Uni most of the time, right? When they were still in NA. It's been slim. So this isn't just like cherry picking, like, oh, he's just bullying Wisp. And it's like, no, like, do I need to bring up chicken contendees? Like, guys, it's not been great. It really hasn't. So there is a systemic problem. It's difficult to see kind of an immediate solution. I think in the future for maybe other esports, the collegiate system will work as that substitute, right? Sure. And given 6 or 7 years, maybe the collegiate system produces some strong programs akin to maybe some of these academy teams in the past that don't have to prey on the marketing budget of an esports franchise and or league, right? That would be the hope.
Sure. Yeah,
so
don't disagree.
Yeah, it's
super hard to design a system around this.
100%.
I'm a fan of these cross plays, always have been, and I still stand by the fact that there is something magic, dude. In essence, right? If you look at Valorant right now, right? Like, and I think I talked about this on Crouch before, but they, like, Fnatic as a brand had a almost renaissance through Valorant just because they picked up a couple of guys that nobody wanted to give the time of day to from the pro sphere. And then these guys won the biggest tournament recently, right? And they just reap the benefits. There's a great piece by Alexander Lee, if you want to look into it, how much social following and whatnot, and how much buzz that Fnatic win created for them. Of course, you also have to say, like, someone like Boaster is actually like lab-grown content in all that he does, from like, ability to win tournaments, dancing, singing, great personality, charismatic. So it makes some sense that there's more to that story, but yeah, I feel like bottom line being the ability to win is still, there's some value there. Well, I lost my train of thought.
No, 100%. And we have had countless discussions regarding like how valuable is it to actually win. Spoiler, I think it's good for one team, the winning team. Everybody else, you better have some other strategies involved on how to win, right? And I had a near submission to the Saved and Drafts Club for the Discord regarding Disguised Toast's recent foray into the Game Changers open qualifier scene in North America for the that whole ecosystem. Apparently to catch people up to speed, he signed a bunch of like streamers who were apparently, from my understanding, like of a fairly high skill level, but obviously primarily streamers. They're not chasing the pro life, if you will. And it increased viewership like multi X numbers, right? Like it was a significant boost in viewership, which only supports a marginalized community, right? It's fantastic. And that seems to be, if I think that's the dare I say, immediate future of esports, right? I think there has to be a different way for teams that have no business winning, right? You know who you are. I don't need to spell it out for you, even talking about our own little space in Overwatch, right? There are teams that will not win. They have sub 10% chances of winning the Overwatch League. You need to have another way to win. You have to find another way to succeed because only one team can succeed. There are 19 other teams. Can't do math. There are 19 other teams that will not have that like attack vector. So what else are you doing?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
There has to be something else. And if it comes down to signing a streamer to make a must-see product, to increase entertainment, to sell jerseys, to create content around, I don't hate that as it stands now. I am a purist. I would like to see the pursuit of mastery. I would like to see the highest level of competition. As it stands right now, I don't know if esports can hold that. I don't know. I know for a fact Overwatch probably can. I don't know if League of Legends can. Maybe CSGO can. I don't know. There's a lot of titles that are biting a bullet that I think was always coming. Because success in esports in a prolonged fashion is incredibly difficult. Only one team every year really gets to benefit from that. There are so many others that just either do nothing or are woefully just trying to chase that carrot on a stick. There are some teams that do it better than others. Obviously, like teams like 100 Thieves. I think FlyQuest to some degree. I don't know like what they really do, but at least their brand is interesting, or at least kind of stands out. But a lot of like the old endemic orgs, like we've seen with TSM and CLG, like they're obviously kind of exiting or maybe even dissolving, right? Like, what are we doing there? What are we really doing? We're just throwing money at chasing a championship that you never were about. You know, you're seeing things like Team Liquid and Cloud9 investing in trying to create products that, you know, career fans want to invest in and buy, you know, memberships to, and creating clothing brands. You know, there has to be something else that you're doing. It can't just be winning, because there's one person who wins. So esports as a whole, I think, needs to really kind of rally around its influencers, embolden them, galvanize them, give them some of the means of production, if you will, and really kind of implement them to see kind of a win-win, at least in my eyes. So
sure.
I think that's maybe where we need to go next. I will have to say, to completely get back on track to the Pro-Am, I will say I was impressed by Trick Room, by Trick Room. Yes, I was impressed by Trick Room as well. But Twisted Minds, I thought it's hard to not give them some kind of a shout out. I think they kind of fit the bill that everybody was billing them as like this like very potent kind of off meta team. Labda, Labrador, Salute, Libido 7, whatever you want to call him, was a boon for that team, was very successful. I think a lot of that team probably will be featured on the Saudi Arabian World Cup team. Expect them to do some big things in the World Cup as well. It's a solid team. I was fairly impressed. I felt like I was sold a correct bill of goods. Everything everybody said about them kind of seemed true. But they came and showed up and gave some teams a run for their money.
Sure. But
there again, it's just a run. Didn't capture a win, even with Houston maybe doing a little bit of trolling. It still was not necessarily the best level to compete on. So other than that, were you impressed at Rocket at all from Wisp? I think that's maybe the only other like big success story coming out of week 2. Did you catch any of those games?
I'll be honest, nah.
Like, okay. Rocket, he's a Tracer player. He was pretty hot. Was very talented. If you know a team like you could throw around a lot like the low budget teams, like a New York would be a good one. Like, I hate to say it, but like if they had to let go of DPS and they wanted to pick up Rocket, I think that would probably be beneficial. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I hate to say just like toss up one of the NA guys, or not NA, but like one of the Western guys, like Psycho or Shockwave, you could see Rocket maybe slot in to a solid degree. It'd probably be Shockwave if I had to guess. Because you do need somebody to play flex at some point. But like Vegas obviously would probably see a significant boon if they wanted to add Rocket. Valiant, obviously, that goes without saying. Even though I think Seeker had like a solid, like again, he's got good bones. He just needs like a good, at least a solid team around him that isn't signed like a week in advance. So that would be ideal. But outside of that, yeah, it is sad. Was hoping to see a little bit more volatility when it came to contenders teams. Maybe we'll have to wait for APAC to kind of get that nut. As we kind of wrap up with the show, any final takeaways? Are we just ready to get out of here?
I think we can just run the bracket just based on the.
Wanna do a quick little bracket run, skis?
Yeah, let's do some bracketology based on the updated runs, right? Like.
All right.
Yeah.
We do have. Oh, beautiful. We do have a shout out to. I feel like there is just like, yeah, the same people who make all the power ranking stuff make this. So shout outs to them. I don't remember who you are, but you're the real ones. Yeah, Atlanta advances. I feel like the rest of them. I feel like Florida is a gimme. No, I feel like those are the easy ones.
Yeah.
Florida goes over Mayhem. Atlanta goes forward. The other two, I am not so sure on.
Really?
Maybe we'll start at the top. Yeah.
Houston locked in, still not in a shock. So
I don't hate that. Yeah, I think that's sound logic.
Do
you have any either or when it comes to Uprising or Defiant? Because that I feel like is.
Dude, if you asked me last week, I would have given you a different opinion.
Yep.
I think you got to say Uprising here.
Yeah, I think you do. And it comes down to like,
and it's
Toronto doing a little bit more poking, right? There's a little bit too much like Sigma play for my taste. And Boston just seems very confident in like playing the meta right now. Even though I've seen Smurf on Doomfist one too many times for my liking, I'll take that over like a significant like archetypical change, if that makes sense, right?
Also, Decay looked great. Birdring looked great. Like,
yep.
And those are the question marks on that roster, right? Like everyone else, you can pretty much expect a high quality performance. Like if those guys are running like circles around opponents, that's when you get stuff going. I'll give you one more, Joe. I think they are actually going to beat the Mayhem.
They might. I did not care for Merit, I will say, and I like Mayhem. But I think Merit is got some problems. There is a consistency factor there.
And that's not even like, you know, I feel like this is very close. This is like 55, 60% Boston. Like it's a close call.
Yep. I think the big questions now when it comes to Boston is how agile they can be at the start of the season. Right. But that's not the win condition right now. The win condition is how good are you right now.
Yeah.
And I think they check a lot of the boxes, at least from what I've seen thus far. And yeah, I would probably have to agree. They do probably edge. I think the Defiant is a tougher matchup. Is that weird to say? What do you think out of the Defiant or the Mayhem is the tougher matchup for Uprising?
I still think Mayhem.
Really?
Just based on quality, yeah. Checkmate was going, dude. Like that's also your player. Like if Checkmate is going, someone is always going, right? Like that's not a question mark that you have. But yeah, I get the Merit reservation. I also have this feeling that Toronto is not 100%ly like trying their absolute utmost to win.
Sure.
But at least in prior games, and maybe that is unfair to say to
apply
that to the rock-out stages, but yeah. No, I think like actually there are a couple of bangers in here. Like I think all the Boston games are bangers.
Yep.
And honestly, I mean, that's probably going to be the best game of the tournament is Atlanta Reign against Houston Outlaws, right?
Yep.
And that's once again a close one. I think you have to say Reign, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if Outlaws can take it. Dude, the tempo those guys play is nasty.
Oh, it's very quick. It certainly is very fast. It's tough because there are certain maps that they've played that either, depending on how charitable you are to Junkbuck, which I tend to be, I tend to question sometimes.
Yeah, he's a known hater of Junkbuck.
I am in some fashions, but then he does other things that I'm like, yo, this is so smart. Oh my god, so good. This case, obviously, the Twisted Minds control map made me mauled to the nth degree, and then I had to use my coping skills. I'm like, okay, look, it's just pro-am, it's just the preseason. I don't need to pillory, this very tenured and very successful coach. Homie's got championships. Gotta come some slack. Maybe he's just trolling a little bit. Maybe just like haha, funny, silly guy. Okay, that's what I'm approaching this with. I do expect Atlanta, Houston to be good, but I'm not trying to eat a shoe, and I think Atlanta's just in the perfect meta. So yeah, I think Atlanta. It probably will be a good game.
That. Yeah.
But I do think Atlanta probably 3-1s Houston.
That's the final, right? That's the actual final? As in, like, that's going to be the...
I don't know. I really don't know.
Oh, really?
I do not know. I really
expect you to be this high about Boston. Okay, that's fine.
I didn't either, to be fair. But what I saw was way better than I expected. I will say. I thought this was going to be a clusterfuck. I thought this was going to be, I think we're in for actually solid games. But I do think Atlanta just is in just a perfect storm. They should not really be touched. I will say I think Houston probably is the closer matchup, but I still think that like Boston probably can still maybe take a map, maybe be competitive. I still have Atlanta winning, but I think a lot of these games are a little bit closer to call. I'm even charitable to the shock. I think in our like pick'ems bracket, shout outs to I think our D is running it. We do have a pick'ems bracket. If the Overwatch League doesn't get their shit together and get a pick'ems bracket for the start of the league, maybe we'll continue to have it. It's up to him. He's kind of volunteering that. So
how
if that's something you're into, get up in the Discord.
How is when are okay, what is being played this weekend? Is it everything but the final, Eric?
I think it's the whole thing.
Wait, isn't there competition still the week after? Maybe I'm wrong.
I think 2 days, 20 hours. April 8th is the quarterfinals.
I am wrong.
And
then, everything is
everything is this weekend. So,
and that like I knew this, but I just somehow didn't know that would be this weekend because
same.
Time works differently after 30, my friend. This is I'm
looking forward to the temporal shift this year. Then it'll be interesting.
For sure.
Shit's weird. But yeah, I mean, would you agree Atlanta probably just wins, right?
You gotta give it to them. You gotta make them favorites. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think they just win, but yeah, like I think they.
No, it's not the feeling of just like they walk over everybody and they just win, but like
you gotta give it to them based on what we've seen. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
Would agree. Atlanta still leading the favorite discussion. I'm still a little bit more charitable when it comes to the shock, but we'll see. We'll see. I do think the ping is going to be a significant factor like it has been. Don't expect the Glads to put up much of a performance. Mayhem London seems to be kind of like a... Didn't they play like quite a bit last year in some of like the tournaments as well? I feel like we've seen that matchup like time and time again. Maybe I'm wrong.
Which
London Mayhem?
Yeah, and usually it's Mayhem that wins this
one.
Yeah.
And I sad to say, but I think it's probably the case this stage as well.
Maybe it's like I feel like London was always like had the momentum, and then Mayhem was just kryptonite. Maybe it's the other way around. Yeah, now we'll see.
I think it seems to be a little bit both in Mayhem's camp, where London still is, there are bits and pieces that I like about London. It just doesn't seem like it really jumps out at me right now. It still feels a little bit more rush focused, a little less Ramatra, I think, is probably limiting them. Not a ton of dive, not a ton of like great dive. So there's some limiting factors there where, you know, Mayhem obviously has a ton of explosive potential. Checkmate's on, someone's on. The backline's great. Merit is a little bit of a coin flip. But yeah, probably enough to get it over the line. So they've got the momentum. They feel, you know, more like the kryptonite, like you're saying. So some good shit. All right. 290 wrapping up. Yiska, what's coming down the pipe?
As I alluded to, that interview. Sorry, not interview, but basically I asked 5 questions to all those guys, then kept chatting a little bit. I'll make that into a feature tomorrow. All things Lifeweaver. And then I also got a text interview in the work. I talked to Pri about an interview with any of the players there, so it's probably not going to happen this week, but probably next week. We keep working on the storyline pieces, of course, like voice lining your Roots of Overwatch stuff. But I also have a long weekend because Germany. So Friday, Monday is off for me, and I'm actually with family. So yeah, like looking forward to a long weekend as well.
Brother needs a break. You know, homie's hitting the pavement. Trick Room interview came out for me today. So if you're loving that story, go check that out. I thought they were very candid in what they, you know, shared, and definitely players from the NA ecosystem that have more than enough momentum to carry them forward. Shout outs to them. Lovely folks there. And then I just submitted on the old GG Recon a piece that basically says teams need to stop pushing the fucking push bot. The economy of the game is changed. We're starting to see that happen from the top down, from contenders to Overwatch League. And spoiler, we started to see it a little bit last year, depending on the metas. But I think this is going to be a big wake-up call for anybody who needs to get a little bit better at push. We need to get better at looking at the maps. We need to get better at looking at what the win conditions of game modes actually are and leveraging that and abusing that to the nth degree. Stop pushing the bot. There are defensible positions that you can hold to win team fights, to push the bot farther after you win the fight. Some funny stuff there, some fun allegories and examples. So if that's something that's interesting, check that out. Hopefully in the next however long.
Yep.
So
we'll
you'll tweet it out. We'll figure it out. It'll be on the socials. So that is pretty much it from us. 290 in the works. 291 coming up. Probably power rankings. We'll have to see. We still have to figure out what that looks like. But stay tuned. New show next week. See ya.
Peace.